Thank you, John.
My name is John Grant. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Goliath Technologies, and we're excited to dig into this meaty topic here today. So let's get started. So we're going to start off real quickly from a format and procedure perspective. Just so you know, the chat window in the lower right-hand corner is open the entire time during the session. Please submit questions as we go through the material. We really love your input and feedback, and we'll try to work that in and answer those questions. At the end, we'll address any relevant questions that would be useful for everyone today. Just so you know, there will be a recording of this session made available that will be emailed to you in your inbox in the event you'd like to share it or view or catch up on items you might have missed or been pulled away during the session. Also, there will be a few survey or polling questions throughout the course of the presentation today. We would definitely love if you just answered one of our quick multiple choice while we're going through the session to make it more productive. So thank you again. Let's get started. And so for today, we're really focusing on something that has obviously grown significantly in the last couple of years, that being, of course, the use of Citrix Cloud. And as folks have done so, obviously there's, as the topic would suggest today, emerged some blind spots that have impacted folks that are attempting to utilize and support user experience. And so what we're going to do today from an agenda standpoint is focus on a specific customer rather, that during their migration into Citrix Cloud encountered some of these blind spots we're talking about and a couple of challenges associated with it. So we'll start off with the what in this particular banking scenario, what their challenges were with user experience that they had to work through, why that occurred, and then we'll talk about how they addressed and resolved those issues based not only on Citrix's recommendation, but by utilizing other technologies that allowed them to address and fill those gaps to support their end users. And so before we get started, we want to ask everyone if you could quickly, we're going to pull up a question quickly, just about everyone's involvement or what their plans are as it relates to Citrix Cloud. When we do sessions like this, going forward, we'd like them to be pertinent to what our customers are doing and what they have planned. And so if you have a project planned to move to Citrix, where you're planning to move to Citrix Cloud, or are already on Citrix Cloud, we'd love to hear about it. Conversely, if you only have the licensing but plan on staying on premise for the foreseeable future, we'd love to know that as well. So, so if you'd like to, in the next couple of seconds, if everyone can just fill that out, that would be great. We really appreciate that. So as we go on and do other topics like this, we focus on things that are most meaningful and useful for our customers.
Yeah, John, if I can add too, as a client success executive here at Goliath, I obviously are intimately involved and speak to our IT professionals and our customers on a daily basis. And I have to say that Citrix Cloud is probably the #1 thing that comes up with each customer. If people aren't on Citrix Cloud, they're talking about it, or they're at least planning on it, or like you said, maybe they own the licenses and they're just doing some research now and planning it later. So really eager to hear and see what our attendees here on today's call, where they're at with this and what their plans are.
Right. Yeah. If they're not already on it or are planning for it, folks are at least keeping it in the back of their mind, right? Or they're always thinking about it as a future architecture to resolve, yep. Or excuse me, to leverage. Okay, good. So let's continue on. I want to go through the next couple of slides and talk a little bit about some of the challenges folks have encountered as they've gone this direction. As you can see, that a particular banking customer, a regional credit union based in Texas, once they deployed Citrix Cloud, they were excited about the advantages of it, having Citrix, allowing Citrix to assist in managing, particularly the control plane and some of the benefits that could bring them. However, what happened as they progressed towards that, they obviously had to work with Citrix to resolve different kinds of issues. They were a more integral part of their process as it related to supporting end users. And given that change, they were initially utilizing the free Citrix tools and some of their traditional server monitoring. But what happened is, as Citrix complaints and user experience issues might occur, and it's not that they increase necessarily, but as they continue to occur as a normal operating procedure, random tickets from different users and things of that nature, they had a very difficult time now resolving them. The Citrix tools, like Director and things of that nature, didn't give them enough detailed information especially given the way that they had to work with Citrix to support the environment, so that they could have evidence of where they needed to direct the troubleshooting effort. They might know a user was having an issue, but whether it was something that they were managing or whether it was something they needed to work on with Citrix, that became difficult to determine because of the lack of specific information, broad enough information to address that. And so when users complain when they were working from home about slowness, or if they complain about long logon times, or simply the inability to log into Citrix Cloud Connector, they had a very difficult time having the evidence they needed to both prove that it wasn't something in their environment, and conversely, utilize that information to try to work on a solution with Citrix support. And that gap in visibility meant a constant back and forth, usually without objective data, which meant a lot of issues started to stack and pend over as time progressed. And so as a result, the reason for this really, I mean, Citrix by itself is already leveraging a combination of technologies. There's a lot of infrastructures involved, and a lot of areas that contribute and drive end user experience. And so already there's a lot of different places these issues, where root cause of an issue might take place. Add the fact that the control plane is being managed by Citrix, and you end up with the need to have data and visibility in order to progress certain troubleshooting efforts and understand how you need to work on a resolution. As a result, it requires a need then for additional visibility and technology that actually gives you an end-to-end view, not just looks at just the Citrix stack, but looks at all of these components on this screen with embedded intelligence and automation so that IT could both have the information and utilize it to resolve it or work on it with their friends at Citrix. And so, the next question then is, why exactly is that the case? And the simple reality of it is that when you have a situation with a number of moving parts in a hybrid sort of deployment model, the free tools are like Director are good in giving you some initial information, but not enough detail to allow you to effectively coordinate many times with the Citrix Cloud team, who is of course managing their piece of the control layer as a part of the environment. You need more detail than just whether a user is having an issue, like I say, around trip time. You need deep visibility within that. You also need broader visibility outside of the Citrix stack and all those components you just saw on the screen. What's more is you also need to have that information historically, because many times when you're escalating an issue or you realize you have a pattern of complaints, many times it's too late to have actual detailed evidence of that. And so retaining that in detail so that you can have that available is almost the only way to actually put in place real fixes. In addition, there is no monitoring detailed intelligence for Citrix Cloud Connector or Citrix Cloud. And so there was no ability to get notice about underlying conditions impacting the health of Citrix Cloud Connector services or communication, and no notification in advance of if that actually went down altogether. And so this is why Citrix actually recommends, in situations like this, an end-to-end purpose-built solution. They would love this in place as much as anyone, so that you can work on these kinds of solutions together. And at the end of the video, at the end of the session today, we'll have there's a link to a video from Citrix where they talk about this specifically. It's about a 2-minute great video, by the way. I would encourage you to check it out, where they explain that you need end-to-end visibility, with purpose-built embedded intelligence and automation to be able to effectively troubleshoot root cause. And this is never more true than in a situation where Citrix Cloud is being leveraged. So we'd love to get your feedback on your experience so far. I think I saw about 17 to 20% of folks have adopted Citrix Cloud. Others are thinking about it. And so not everyone necessarily has had a challenge with this. Some of this depends on your environment, I suppose, how much you're leveraging Citrix, and how many complaints you're getting. But we'd love to know what your experience has been, because when we're holding sessions like this, we'd really like to focus on solving problems and being the most, providing the most assistance to our customers that are trying to provide the best user experience for their end users on Citrix Cloud.
And John, if I can add too, when customers make the decision to move to Citrix Cloud, they do so because of the benefit of not having to manage certain parts of the infrastructure. The challenge, however, is that the same problems that they were having on-premise are going to still be true when they move to the cloud too. So I'm really eager to see what some of our customers have found thus far. And if that's been the case, have there been new problems? Have their problems been solved? But as we all know, and if we looked at and talked about the previous slide, supporting Citrix in general is difficult. So when you add the additional, say, lack of visibility with moving a key part of that infrastructure to the cloud, that can also complicate things even more.
Right. That's a great point. There's so many benefits to having Citrix assist with managing the control plane, but there's a trade-off. You then need visibility to be able to make that relationship operationally run smoothly. And that's exactly why I think Citrix supports the use of this kind of technology, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Okay, I think we've had an opportunity to get some feedback. Oh, beautiful, okay.
Yeah.
This is great, okay, all right, good. Well, Joe, you want to pick it up and talk a little bit, go into more detail, given your focus on working with customers like this, what they said that they really needed in a solution to compensate for some of these challenges.
Yeah, and I think we can talk specifically about this customer and the challenges they were having, and going back to what you had just talked about, why it's necessary to have a deeper level of monitoring, and exactly why Citrix, like you said, recommends this. So what do you need to be able to effectively monitor your Citrix Cloud environment? Is really a purpose-built, proactive monitoring technology that's going to be able to give you both real-time and historic user experience metrics, provide monitoring and advanced warning around the health of not only your on-premise environment, but your cloud connector and the communication of that cloud connector with the control plane that is in Citrix Cloud being managed by Citrix. So without this type of visibility into real-time and historic user experience and having that embedded intelligence automation, it's really, really difficult to be able to effectively monitor user experience. And specifically to this bank customer at hand that we're focusing on today's webinar, they purchased our technology. They were able to deploy it in under 2 hours. They, with the help of the technology, immediately discovered the environment, applied proactive monitoring and intelligence across their on-premise infrastructure, and they immediately started seeing the benefit by seeing deep user experience and infrastructure metrics and dashboards, which instantly gave them more visibility than what they had previously with the Citrix tools. So what was the outcome? And obviously, start at the top here. They were able to finally realize the benefits of Citrix Cloud, and we're going to really focus the demonstration part of today's call on that and how we were able to change and really help the day-to-day lives of their IT team. But really, it comes down to 3 main bullet points. They were able to quickly solve user tickets because of that depth of data. They now had proactive alerting for their cloud connectors and specific issues with Citrix Cloud that can impact users. And they were able to provide detailed historical reports on both user experience and the infrastructure that in the end really helped them justify the move to Citrix Cloud. So I think at this point, we've shown enough slides. I think we can actually get into the live IT environment and show exactly how this technology was able to help out this specific customer. So what we're going to move to is a live IT environment, and we're going to show you exactly how the team at this credit union, this bank in Texas, was able to use the data in Goliath to be able to solve the 3 bullet points that we talked about. So like we said, immediately upon deployment, we're discovering the entire environment. We're bringing back all of the real-time and historical user sessions into this really easy-to-use display that was able to be leveraged by this company's one Citrix administrator and their help desk to be able to quickly see all their user sessions and identify where they're coming from and if they're experiencing any issues. And this dashboard that you're seeing right here contains specific details that helped the IT team at this bank work with the Citrix Cloud team when resolving tickets, and only because of the deep user experience and infrastructure metrics. So by viewing this view here, you're able to see the username, how they connected in, user experience metrics, metrics about the infrastructure, and then what they're able to do is click on a specific user and see all of the relevant details and metrics that went into providing a user experience for this user. And this is available both real-time and historical. Really important, because when you're talking about the tools they had at hand to them previously, they were really only able to see real-time data points, and anything historical was averaged or rolled up. So what they're getting with Goliath was a look both real-time and historical, and granularity into the performance of both the user experience and the infrastructure. And again, they were able to help use this information to be able to resolve tickets much faster and work with the Citrix Cloud team only because of the data that was available to them. So let's take a look at a specific use case here and what they're able to see. So we clicked into the user. We're able to see on this main page that user's path, their client machine, how they connected in. So we're able to see the cloud connector and that IP address right here. So the specific cloud connector they used. The delivery controller in Citrix Cloud that brokered the session. They're able to see the session host, and they're able to see the session, the hypervisor host that VDI or that app server was running on. And then below, they're able to see all the relevant key performance metrics for this specific user at the time frame of their session. So it doesn't matter if it's real time or was last week. In this case, it was earlier today. We're able to see exactly what was going on for that user and exactly what they were experiencing. So when we talk about the data, we talk about things like ICA round trip time, like John mentioned earlier. This is data that is pretty common. They're able to see in Citrix Director, which is a really great data point, and is able to point you to the specific points in time that this user was potentially having issues, and very, very clearly. And their help desk was able to use these data interpretation lines that you see on these graphs here to identify exactly when performance was bad. So we can see in this specific session, there were 2 data points, one at 8:11 and one at 8:28, where this user exceeded poor performance. And this is all new data to them, because with their current tools, they were not able to go back historically and see exactly what points the user was having a problem. They were only able to see real-time data points, which can be very helpful, but when it comes to troubleshooting, you need the full picture. So in this same display, they're able to see the performance of the network. They're able to see the performance of the internet connection where that user was located. So if the user was working from home, they're able to see exactly what their home Wi-Fi was like. If they were working in a branch location, able to see exactly what type of bandwidth allocation that user had for their specific session. They're also able to see the performance of the infrastructure, which is really important when we talk about trying to determine where my problems are. Goliath is able to point you to exactly where the bottleneck was, whether it's in the network or within the infrastructure. And what this specific customer was able to see was a correlation across a number of different users that were having issues that we were able to see here by identifying that high IC round trip time. What they were able to see was a correlation with the hypervisor hosts in their environment that consistently had high memory for all of their users. So they were able to click into the memory, and they were able to see that memory was pegged at 96 to 97% for all of their users. And now they were able to quickly see that this is not a Citrix Cloud problem. This is something on our infrastructure. And their team was able to start using this information to solve tickets much faster without even having to engage Citrix support and tell their management, hey, we have some pretty old hosts here, and we need to add resources to them or perhaps replace them. So that's example number 1.
Yeah, that's a great example, especially because, by the time that a customer would be able to see that, let's say they've had a couple of slowness complaints and it gets to the Citrix engineering folks or the Citrix engineer, the network team probably said that the network was fine. By the time they know to go look at their servers, they may or may not even have any server data available. And they know that if they check Director, for example, they know they're not going to take all the other infrastructure pieces into account, as good as Director is. And so essentially what this will do is give them the ability to do a complete analysis after the fact, at the time, whenever, so they can knit everything else together that could have impacted that session in one easy view, so they know where to go from there. Do you think that's an accurate way of saying that?
You make a great point, John. The unique value of our technology, obviously the historical data, like we talked about, really important and frankly crucial to be able to troubleshoot issues quickly and find them. However, saving time, most companies have a number of different monitoring products, and all those monitoring products focus on specific IT elements. What's unique about Goliath is that we're focused on user experience. We're also monitoring those other IT elements, but we're bringing them all together in a single pane of glass. And you can see much of that information right here in this main screen. You're able to see the network. You're able to see the user's connection, user experience metrics, the performance of the infrastructure, and then you also have these dedicated tabs along the top that dive into this even deeper. So if it requires further information, like we're looking at the hypervisor host, we're able to see the data stores that are attached, the other VMs running on the host, perhaps, in this case, a couple other VMs were running high on memory as well too. And it's just a couple of clicks. You're not having to go talk to a different team in some cases, or have to go looking to other products. Everything is right here in the one view. So when it came time to solving tickets quickly on their own time, this bank was able to use this information very, very easily and very quickly. And the second example that we had was talking about how they were able to work with Citrix support on the items that Citrix is managing, namely the delivery controller, perhaps the storefront server as well too. And those of you on today's call, you know how important those elements are to delivering a good user experience, and Citrix is responsible for those. So they were able to use the information here, identify that the user was having poor performance. They looked through everything else here and everything looked okay. And they were able to see the logon times and performance of the delivery controller for that logon time. And they were able to use this information to bring to Citrix and show them, hey, I'm looking at a high logon time here or poor performance. Everything else checks out on my end. However, I can see this logon was 27 seconds and 22 of the 27 seconds were coming from the delivery controller. Can you perhaps look at the resources for the delivery controller? Were there any other issues from an event perspective or services perspective running on that delivery controller at this time that were having issues? So it really not only led them to solve tickets more quickly, but helped them speed up the time with their Citrix tickets and improve the communication with Citrix as well. And obviously another big part to Citrix Cloud is that cloud connector that John talked about before. That cloud connector is actually managed from the customer's environment. So this is something that Citrix does not have a handle on. However, it is a big blind spot for a lot of customers when they move to Citrix Cloud. So in addition to all that deep information that we're giving you about user experience and the performance of the infrastructure, we're also monitoring the cloud connector as well too. And we're able to bring you in this heat map structure in the form of a dashboard here. So when you're in Goliath, you're able to see all of your different infrastructure components, including the cloud connectors, in this dashboard view that is a heat map, so I can see exactly where my problems are by the colors that are presenting here. So I can see that on my role servers, they're red, that maybe I have some issues there. And I can see my cloud connector group right here. And I can drill in specifically to those cloud connectors and take a look at each individual cloud connector and understand the two things. One, the health of the cloud connector by clicking into the specific metrics to see things like CPU, memory, disk utilization, be able to trend that both real time and historically. Dive in deeper into disk performance, disk space, network performance. And this is information that from a cloud connect perspective, which is vital when it comes to delivering user experience, just because we know how Citrix Cloud is architected and how important these cloud connectors are. So one, you have the health of the cloud connector. Number two, we also have purpose-built monitors that come out of the box that are applied to these cloud connectors that are looking for specific items on those cloud connectors that not only impact the health, but impact the communication with that control plane that's in the cloud. So all these monitors that we're looking at right here are looking for different services and different events on that cloud connector that can cause issues or potential downtime. And Goliath is able to find those proactively, and in most cases, restart them before your users are impacted. And again, that's not just for the Cloud Connector. We're doing that across the entire environment. So you can see here, all of these monitors come out of the box with the technology. There's no scripting involved here. They all come with the technology, proactively finding things and saving time, frankly, for small IT staff in this case to be able to pinpoint issues. So you can see just the level of depth here and all the different things that we're looking for. It really is like adding a full-time employee to your staff, and one that's looking proactively at the environment that's going to show you and find you errors before your users are impacted. And another part of the technology I think that this specific customer has found helpful, and I think many of our customers have found helpful in the past, is our synthetic Citrix availability testing. So what you're able to see here is a dashboard view where this part of the technology is proactively logging in to Citrix Cloud on a scheduled basis. So it's all UI based. It's a real user. They have this user logging into Citrix Cloud. Again, it's like having an FTE whose only job is to log into Citrix Cloud and tell you whether your resources are available or not. And you can see all of those proactive logons right here from this analysis tab. You can see how long each launch took at the top. On the bottom, you can see each individual launch, the time, the resource, the endpoint or location that this launch was coming from, and ultimately whether the launch was successful or failed. And you can see each step of the process and the time. You can even drill into each individual launch, and we're giving you screenshot evidence of each step of the process. So how you're able to log into the storefront page, where the user is going to find their resources, and whether those resources actually open for the end user. So they found this part of the technology particularly helpful when trying to get ahead of issues. And if there is a failure at any stage of the process here, the technology gives you a proactive warning and shows you exactly where the failure was. So when it comes to being proactive, there's really no, you can't be more proactive than actually have a synthetic user that's logging in to tell you whether Citrix is available or not. And again, this information was vital for this customer when working with Citrix support.
Right. And that tests every step of the process, including the components that you, the customer, in this case, our banking customer, is responsible for, as well as the brokering pieces that are being managed by Citrix. And so it's a good way of validating that proactively on a scheduled basis. Good.
And go ahead, John.
No.
I was just saying, and much of the data that we showed you today is able to be reported on and trended historically. So this particular customer, we talked about the issues they were having prior to moving to Citrix Cloud and during that migration and quickly afterwards. What they were able to do with our technology is document the user experience and show that user experience as a whole is actually pretty good. And this was vital for their management team because moving to Citrix Cloud was a big change, something that was debated over for years, and they were able to use the information here in this specific report to show exactly what user experience is like, and not just a high level, an objective look at user experience, so I can see exactly what my user's connection was, what their latency was, their round trip time was as a whole, and showing the individual users as well too. So they found this information incredibly valuable when it came to justifying the move to Citrix Cloud. And this one report here is obviously for user experience. However, you also can trend logon times, like we're seeing here in this report. We can track the infrastructure performance as well as user activity and productivity as well. So with this type of information, obviously a lot of customers have been leveraging this on a daily basis. Many of the customers that you see in this slide here are leveraging Citrix Cloud. So some of the biggest Citrix environments and smallest Citrix environments in the world are utilizing the technology both on-premise and in the cloud. And the takeaway here really is that the technology has the ease of use to be used by small and medium-sized businesses, but obviously also can scale to large enterprise environments as well. So with that, John, I'll pass it back over to you, and then maybe we have some questions. I did see that there were some questions that came through during the course of the session today.
Yeah, we got a couple good questions here. I'll try to batch them up for the sake of efficiency. The first good question came in, and I'll paraphrase it a little bit. But essentially, the question is, and I appreciate the frank wording of this, is that I guess I'm missing where the benefits are above traditional VDA and endpoint monitoring in relationship to cloud. And I think this was earlier on before you started going into some of that. But then the question is really, what specifically can it show from a cloud perspective that you can't get with endpoint monitoring? So we also got another question just about what kind of deeper visibility or metrics you're getting. Very similar to this one. What other metrics are you getting that are beyond what you could have gotten with traditional tools? Valid question. And I thought maybe we could quickly revisit perhaps the session display. We were talking about some of that, and specifically talk about how what's kind of unique about the specific metrics that are being knit together in some of those views, in terms of both the details and a couple, just maybe you could call it a couple quick areas, from maybe a user experience perspective, logons, ICA channels, things of that nature that might be useful, as well as how that's then knit with the rest of the infrastructure intelligently. Maybe if you could talk a little about that. And then, of course, revisit just the specific cloud monitoring pieces that are included that are being monitored as well. By the way, Joe, I think this question came in a little bit earlier on in the session, but I understand where the question is coming from for sure.
Not a problem. So let's start with the logon process. So Citrix Director obviously gives you some details into the logon process. We talked about how that can sometimes be limited historically, and the data can sometimes be rolled up. So what you're able to see, and I'm looking at a session from August 16th here, I'm able to see every part of that logon process, from the delivery controller to Citrix receiver, how they communicate with each other, how long each step of that communication took, in succession right here, and show you exactly how long each part took. And this data has not been touched. It's available historically. Again, this is 3 weeks old at this point. And then we're even able to give you the metrics here at the bottom, like authentication, group policies. We're able to break open group policies and show you each individual policy and how long each one took. So while Citrix gets some of that information in some of their native tools, they're not able to give you the level of depth and detail that we can around the logon process. So that's one. When it comes to user experience, the big takeaway here is just obviously the depth of detail, but just how easy it is to use, and how the information is quickly correlated to be able to allow teams to be able to use the information and solve problems quickly. So in this specific example, I'm able to see a high round trip time. I'm also able to see high network latency at that exact same time, all in succession here. So I'm able to quickly point to the network as being the bottleneck for this customer. And this is real network latency. It's not an ICMP or ping-based test. It's real network latency that we're measuring, and it's the true impact of the network on this specific user. And again, it's specific to this user and the time that they connected in. And what's truly unique here is we're able to give you the amount of essentially download speed this specific user has for Citrix from their location. So I'm able to see at that same point in time where the user was experiencing latency from the network, I'm able to see a massive drop in connection speed at their location. And this was a remote user, and we're able to look and see that their Wi-Fi connection was well below what the acceptable threshold this year, getting as low as 3 megabits per second. So literally, in just a couple of clicks here, I'm able to confirm the user has issues, point to the network, and specifically from a remote user, see exactly what their connection was like at their location. And it's all in one screen. It's available both real time and historically.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, Joe. the specificity of it, the specific metrics that are kind of unique that allow you to answer questions. And as well as I think, one of the things we get asked a lot all the time, especially for folks going to Citrix Cloud, is, I went to Citrix Cloud because I want help managing the environment, so that because I want to add assistance to my team who has a lot on their plate, or are generalists, or maybe don't have tons and tons of experience with Citrix perhaps. And so one of the other questions we actually got as well is, how would my help desk use this information daily on a day-to-day basis? Because ultimately, and I'm adding this to the question, I'm reading into it a little bit, as a Citrix admin, you'd actually like to not have to deal with some of the things you just talked about. If a remote user has a home Wi-Fi connection, that's an issue, right? Versus that being some issue you have to work with Citrix Cloud on, right? So how would this actually be used, and how does that change the way actually even the lower levels of support address these kinds of issues? And then, Joe, let's not forget to circle back on specifically what we uniquely do for monitoring Citrix Cloud, because I think that was a part of our friend's question. I think Andy submitted that earlier. It was a great question. So maybe you could talk about that, how that changes how help desk uses it, as well as then what we actually do from a Citrix Cloud intelligence perspective, especially around connector.
Sure. So first thing about the help desk, it goes back to what we talked about before too. Not only having the data available, but having that data tightly correlated, specific to that user, and displayed in a way that's user-friendly and able to use. I'm able to click into any one of these graphs, and I'm able to see exactly what performance was like for that user, and exactly what times the user was experiencing issues. And it's vital for help desk to have this type of information and have it displayed in a really easy to view use, because those of you who support Citrix know that a lot of the complaints that wind up in your bucket, and it's specific to the customer we were talking about, they have one Citrix admin. So previously to having the technology, anything that was Citrix related was being put on his plate. So the ticket came in, Citrix is slow, bypass help desk, went right to that Citrix admin. Now help desk is able to use this information, and they're able to do things like we talked about just before. They're able to see exactly what the bottleneck was in a couple of clicks. And in a lot of cases, you can see a remote user, they have poor Wi-Fi connection like we're seeing here, and they're able to speak to that end user and close the ticket and resolve the ticket, rather than just going and logging off the user or simply passing that back to the Citrix admin.
So they don't even really need to understand Citrix all that much, just know whether it's above those lines or not, and then what to do with each of those graphs if they're above it, one or the other, essentially, right?
Exactly. And for those who choose to purchase the technology, we do have training that's specific to the help desk that go through these specific metrics, from the user experience point of view to infrastructure metrics, that show users exactly how to use this information and how they can either solve tickets more quickly,
Sure,
or escalate them either, that to the Citrix team, so on and so forth.
Right. And while that gives you a good determination, it allows you to very quickly have the support organization and engineers quickly analyze where they need to focus on troubleshooting an issue. There's also intelligent monitoring, though, that actually looks within the Citrix Cloud Connector to understand if you have something that's going to impact an issue, with a lot of intelligence that fills in that gap, that gap as well, right?
Yes, and Goliath offers something very unique for those who are moving to cloud, because we're the only ones who can definitively look at the cloud connector in the way that we showed you before here, proactively, and we're monitoring for all of the conditions on the cloud connector that impact both health and communication. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is giving you this inside view into the performance of that cloud connector and how they communicate with Citrix to help you get ahead of issues, and before users are even impacted, alert you to them, and really, help you be more proactive in something you didn't have the visibility to do before.
Right. Communication, the actual Citrix Cloud Connector health and its communication with the delivery controller and the rest of the control plane, so that you can understand if you have an underlying issue there and can go right to it instead of having to filter and whittle that down over days or weeks. At least for our banking customer here and for many others, I think that being on those calls with them, it seemed pretty useful. Okay, one more question here, Joe. The last question is, do I need to run scripts to get this data? And if so, how can you track this historically then? Good question, I think, because there are some technologies that are very real-time oriented and kind of, scripting. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so the technology comes out of the box with all of the information that we showed before too, and does not require scripting. So all the information is collected automatically by the technology, and you're able to, it's kept historically. You're able to report on it. There's no scripting or any type of manual work that needs to be done, and it doesn't require any type of agent or device on that user's endpoint to collect the information either, which I know is a question we get all the time.
Right. And that's a pretty big deal, especially when you're talking about retroactively troubleshooting or analyzing issues. You need to have that data, and can't always go back digging in without it and using other means after the fact. So, okay, good. Well, that's our time for today. We want to thank everyone for coming. If you look at the screen that you see here up on the slide, of course, the first link you'll notice was something we referred to earlier, which I would encourage everyone to take a look at and watch for 2 minutes. Citrix Ready does a really good job of explaining this and exactly why their suggestion is that many customers leverage software like this to provide an end-to-end view, look outside just the Citrix stack, and use embedded intelligence and automation for this, just so you can quickly get to root cause and have the objective data that you're looking for. Just so you know, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, there's a couple of options where you can do so pretty easily. We offer personalized demonstrations with a technical consultant. If you'd like to ask us, there were a couple of good questions today, but obviously if you'd like to drill in a little bit further and have a one-on-one demonstration, you certainly can. We also offer a free trial of the software. You can actually deploy this. It takes all about an hour or two. Our banking customer here took 2 hours to deploy the software. And so you can actually see this visibility firsthand in your environment in short order. And then we also offer, in the event that you're not necessarily looking for software per se or a product, but want to benefit from the visibility and the expertise that comes with it, we also offer troubleshooting services where we can assist you with specific troubleshooting needs and engage with you in that way. And we also offer remote monitoring and management services, focused on Citrix environments, where the technology and visibility we went over today is leveraged, as well as the Citrix expertise and team that can provide assistance and augment what your existing team is doing, so that you have technical resources right there to assist with key issues and to manage and resolve these kinds of issues that we've talked about today. Please feel free to email us as well at techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. And we want to thank everyone again for coming today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.